listening to the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast, a podcast in sisterhood for female entrepreneurs that serves up savvy, actionable marketing advice and interviews with creative business owners who are in the trenches, building their businesses as we speak. The Marketing in Yoga Pants community is for you, the girl on her couch, in her yoga pants, top knot tight, hunched over her MacBook, trying her hardest to get the word out about her business. So in the name of supporting each other while supporting ourselves, bringing community, sound marketing advice, coffee, chocolate, and wine together for you, yoga pants wearing business owner, in a world where followers mean nothing, but paying customers mean the world, join us on this week's podcast episode and in our private Facebook group where you'll meet your soul sisters and build your business in yoga pants. Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. I'm Brit and I'm here today with Donna Labar. She is a real estate broker, an integrative health coach, a published author and speaker, so many things. So I can't wait to dive in with Donna. Donna, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Brit. I really appreciate you having me on your show. It's really exciting. So, I can't wait.
Yes,
I love this.
Me too. Okay, so Donna and I first met just a couple of months ago at her home. She was hosting a local Rising Tide Society meeting. And just from the meeting that she hosted and led, I was just completely inspired by Donna. So I am so pumped to get to chat with her today, get some insight into her business, her many different industries that she's had her hands in over the years, and what makes it all tick for her. So Donna, you ready to jump in?
I am. Let's
Awesome.
do it.
Okay, let's go. All right. So like I said before, you've had your hands in several different things over the years. So I would love to hear the story behind how you have come to do this with your life up until this point. I mean, I know it's probably a long story, long journey, but tell us about it. I've heard a little bit about it, but I want to hear it from you again.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess, I have had a lot of different interests and a lot of different businesses I was in, because we kind of vacillate between what we love and what we're interested in and needing money to survive. So I would say my life story is a vacillation between that, so probably true for a lot of people. We start following our dreams and then we're like, okay, just need to buy groceries and gas for my car.
Yes.
Get real, Donna. So, currently I'm really, my book came out in the fall, of course, my Simple Natural Healing. And, my publisher, Morgan James Publishing from New York, they're like great, trying to help me, expand my book and expand my mission of transforming people's health naturally. So that's definitely where I am today, but it's kind of like where I actually started when I was 17 years old. And I had a friend, and her dad was diagnosed with stomach cancer in his late 50s. And I was 17, she was like 22. And we just really delved into what was going to happen to him, because he needed to have his stomach removed because the cancer was so bad. But he elected not to have chemotherapy because he was kind of a scientist kind of minded guy. He was a chemical engineer. And this of course was 40 years ago. So he didn't think, chemo sounded too good to him. He said, they want to kill all my cells and hope my good ones come back. And I think, what if the bad ones come back and my good ones don't? So he did have his stomach removed, and we knew when he came home, we had to figure out like how he was going to get nutrition, like what was going to happen. So my friend and I were really like dug in like researchers. And the thing is, we were kind of like natural researchers anyway, because the way I had met her was I was in the co-op program through high school with legal aid, and I was the secretary there. And she was a starter attorney, and she had gone to college and law school early and had got her bar and had come out and was already working in this little legal aid office. So she was like a really interesting person, but kind of like a brainiac type person anyway. So we just I wanted to be a paralegal and a legal researcher. So we really just dug into research what we could do to optimize his body to heal and how he could get nutrition. So I never knew that inquiry and that intense want to have him get better would turn into something that I would spend my whole life interested in and doing. So Alan passed away just a few years ago at the age of 93. And I spent my, all my adult years going back and forth with him with different things that we could come up with to help reverse, like arthritis and cancer and dementia and diabetes, like all kind of things to help his friends who were going through aging, and he just so wanted to personally help them. So we never did it at a commercial level, just always at a friends on a mission to find natural ways to get someone to turn their health around. So we were like immensely good at it, I have to say. So it was always fun. But when I go back to the job end of all this, because that was like all great fun. So I worked for legal aid until 1980. And when the Reagan administration came in, our jobs were all defunded by the federal government. So I got my pink slip that I had to go. So that was really very disturbing to me, because I had I had gone for a paralegal certificate so I could be a legal researcher and help with cases that came through. And so it just kind of threw me for a loop, because I didn't know what to do next. So I thought, I'm going to be practical. I was always good at math, and math and science was always my most favorite subject. So I decided, I think I'm going to go get an accounting degree, because I could at least always be a bookkeeper or an accountant. Like everybody has to have that, everybody's got to file their taxes and keep track of things. So I thought, I'm going to do something very practical. So, I went to Keystone and Wilkes University for my degree in finance and commerce, which was major in accounting, and really thought I was going to be a CPA. I studied for my CPA, and when it was time for me to sit for it, I got cold feet. I thought, oh my gosh, this means I'd have to be a CPA for the rest of my life. It seemed so like terminal. Like, I don't know if I could really sign up for that. So I went and started my own little accounting business called Computerized Accounting and Business Services. And this was back in the mid 80s. And we really were just coming into computers. And so I bought like a TRS-80 or whatever, this big old computer, and kind of just went around to businesses and, for a reasonable fee, I would put all their books on computer and their payroll and come out to them each month and pick up new stuff and drop off the reports. So that business like took off like a rocket, because everybody wanted that, and no one had their own computers back then. So things are so different now, unbelievable.
Yeah.
But so I grew that fast, but I also learned during those couple years that I'm really very social as a personality. So I wasn't really having the kind of people interaction that I'd like to have. And I just felt like, a lot of my time doing accounting was so boring and so like limiting for my brain. So I just for a short stint while I was looking for a job that would help pay my college tuition, I worked as a secretary for a real estate office. And I think I was only there maybe 6 months or 8 months before I got like an accounting job. But during that time, like I just loved the real estate business, and I loved the people, the interaction with other agents and with other brokers, and then with banks and attorneys. And, I just felt so at home in that business. And then of course the interaction with helping people sell their house or find a house. So I just always would go back to that in my mind when I was doing my accounting work, like, geez, real estate seems so much better. So lo and behold, I went and got my real estate license and started getting that off the ground. And within 3 years, I had done the state's requirements to be a broker and own my own company. So I really just like flew with real estate. So I sold my computerized accounting and business services to a local accountant out of Scranton, and he's still my accountant today. I licensed I bought my company the year after that, and he licensed it and has done my accounting for me ever since. I haven't had to do that, and really just basic bookkeeping.
Wow.
So I've been a real estate agent since 1984 and a real estate broker since 1987. I bought a franchise in our area in 88, and then another one in 89, and 2 more Century 21 franchises in 1990. So by 91, I had 4 Century 21 franchises in Northeast PA. And then in late 91, beginning of 92, the market crashed. And I had to close one of the offices right away. It was out in the Pocono region, and the Poconos really suffered in the early 90s. A lot of foreclosures, people lost everything. So I didn't have that office very long, and I ended up closing it. And I ran my Scranton office for a couple years, and the market there changed and the taxes had changed. So I ended up deciding to close that as well. So we expand and we contract. I've learned there is a flow for all of us in our individual lives, and there's a flow in our in our business and what we do for a living. Like sometimes it's great and you feel like so super and it's expanding, and then when it needs to change, the contraction of business can seem very disturbing. So I still have my Clark Summit and Tunkhannock offices today, my Century 21 brokerages. And since then, I also have a partnership up in Wellsboro, Pennsylvania, which is where the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon is. It's about 93 miles from my home, and I have a commercial brokerage there. And of course, with this Marcellus shale gas discovery or development that's happened in Northeast Pennsylvania, it seemed that I should really get into commercial real estate because I had a real understanding of real estate and the effects of these kind of developments. So I kind of just moved over and do both. I do commercial and residential. So I've been doing that for 33, going on 34 years. And then in the meantime, I've always, my daughter, Monica, she's in the Rising Tides group. And
love Monica.
Yeah. So she's a young businesswoman finding her way. And of course, getting her Monzi's floral design has really taught her a lot of lessons, sweet and sour, about business. We all get our lumps over our head for sure. So she was sick when she was 12 years old. She had acute myeloid leukemia, and, that really made me step up my casual interest in helping people um, turn their health around to being like laser focused on it, because I was told 7 times over a 9-month span that Monica wouldn't live, that she would definitely die, and
Oh
that I
my
needed
goodness.
to really embrace that and help her deal with it. But I just never could. I could never think that way. I just kept thinking, well, she's here right now. Like we shouldn't be talking in front of her this way. But they would just openly talk to me with her right there. Um, so I just really focused on all the means of natural health recovery, integrated with her hospital stay. And she had chemotherapy through that year. And her doctor worked with me great to do anything, food wise or supplement wise that I wanted to try to integrate, because he said, we're doing all experimental protocols with her. We really don't know that we have anything that can save her. And of course, at this late stage, you don't know if you have anything that can help. So we'll just all of us will work together and try to keep her here. So that was like a miracle in itself, because a lot of doctors just really want nothing to do with anything holistic. They worry that it interferes with their meds. So this particular doctor went on to get his holistic medicine degree and has been a chief of the Children's Cancer Hospital at Hershey, and really, really expanded and intelligent doctor. So we were so blessed that he happened to be her oncologist. That was assigned to her when we started, because we needed somebody with that amount of open-mindedness to have a chance at keeping her here. So the first day he talked to us, when he came in the room after she was diagnosed, he said, he drew a picture for us and said, this is what your bone marrow looks like if you're normal. This is what your bone marrow looks like. And, you are 100% cancer in your bone marrow. And so it's like you won the negative lottery here.
Oh.
And so he said, you have about two weeks to live. And so you have a lot of decisions to make today. And so he just started telling us about their study protocols and things. So if you can ever imagine how horrific, like it's such a horrific time in our lives, because up till then I thought she had the flu, and we just couldn't get her recovered from the flu. She just had flu symptoms that were hanging on for 6 weeks. And so that was all life changing for me. And of course Monica's 31 now, so that was almost 20 years ago, and she's alive and well. And her doctor did go get his holistic medicine degree, because he was very impressed by kids that their parents integrated. They seem to do really well. So she was one of those. So he continued to study her for a long time after her normal 10 years of being followed. He asked if he could pay to follow her even longer, to see how she progressed in life after having all the different drugs and chemotherapies and things she had. So that was huge. And so people started, I started really helping people with terminal cancer. I wasn't certified, but people kind of knew of me then. And we live way out in the country, so there's just like not a holistic store around the corner or holistic practitioners. And so I just started helping people that had terminal cancer that just felt like they wanted to try to do something else, because they didn't really feel like they were going to die. They were just like, the doctor's given up and said everything they know to do, they've done. And these folks should go home and get their life in order, that there's nothing else to do. So I've helped hundreds of people in the area with this kind of scenario. And then life kind of progressed. A friend of mine wrote a book, and I went to California with her and did a big workshop with 800 authors. And I met an author there that had some health problems, and her children also did. So she took me to dinner and kind of got me to help her with what to do with their situations, with their health. And then she said within just like 2 days, they all started to feel better, like just making some simple changes. And so she kept messaging me and wanted me to write a book about it. She's like, people need to have this book. People need to know what to do. So she really got me going. She said, if you would even just write 2 sample chapters, I would try to get a real publisher for you, because that's how important I think this is. So I did end up doing that. I wrote 2 sample chapters and sent them to her. And within a week of doing that, I was in a contract with a New York publisher. So it's all been exciting, because I really try to bring it home to people how they can transform their health naturally, and simple natural healing. The subtitle is A Common Sense Approach to Total Health Transformation. And since October, I've sold almost 1,400 books myself, and my publisher, of course, they're on Kindle and Barnes and Noble and Powell Books and Indie Books, all the favorite places people find their books. But when I do talks and hit on all these different topics, people aren't sleeping well. Their gut health is horrible. They have all kinds of stomach issues and acid reflux and headaches, and they can't go to the bathroom, right? And and then they have some of these diagnoses that are really like inflammatory illnesses and autoimmune illnesses and cancer and diabetes. And my book really is a starting point for anyone trying to reverse an illness of any place they are in the illness. It's like a real aha, this is where I can start. And then it's also great for people to just know how they can maintain good health if if they're okay now and they just don't want to even go down that road. They want to stay young, stay vital, keep their energy. This is like a perfect little book to read to make sure that you're doing all the important things, the things that really are like the most bang for your buck to keep you healthy. So when I wrote the book, you can see how thick it is. It's like 136 pages. But when I first wrote it, it was like almost 300 pages. And
oh
I
my
thought,
goodness.
nobody's going to read 300 pages about how to simply turn their health around.
Yeah.
That looks hard. So I really had to work with my editor to whittle it down to something that's just story form, really easy to read, and you just walk away with like some recipes and some really good basic stuff on like, I can do that and I could do this, and just turns your thoughts around.
Yeah, and I love that. And I mean, you just covered so much, and we will definitely talk about that book. I will say myself, you gave us a copy, everyone that came to your home that day, and I, with a nutrition and health background myself, it was so great to grab on to a physical book and see, and just kind of leaf through the pages and see how simple you've made it. Because as we all know, I mean, there's all types of sources of nutrition and health information out there, and it just gets same with marketing, right? I mean, there's just all sorts confusing. Of information out there. It's all so confusing, and it makes it impossible to really, truly, it feels impossible to make a meaningful, lasting change until someone like you comes along and can break it down and make it like, listen, this actually could work for you. I want to be there for you and show you how to do that simply, right? Yes. Just so inspiring. Also inspiring, I find, just over the course of your career, how many pivots Right. And not small. I mean, I'm going to say not small pivots.
No.
I mean, they were kind of massive.
Yeah.
And, you know, now you can sit there and kind of review everything over the past how many years, 30, 40 years. And they, you know, you can go through them like they were nothing, but I'm sure while you were going through them,
Oh, yeah.
they weren't nothing. I mean, they were
No.
probably pretty huge. And I think it's just so inspiring to talk to someone that now is, you know, 30, 40 years down the road and said, yeah, I went through these pivots and I got through it. Right.
Yeah.
Along
Yeah.
with, I'm sure, a ton of support from many different sources. And
Yeah.
also, from what I can tell, you know, you're so in tune with yourself as well.
Yeah.
So as you're going through these things, these pivots, these decisions, you're able to make them, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit to that point of, as business owners, being in tune, being in touch with ourselves, maybe our intuition, especially since we're women, that's a huge voice in our head, right? Our intuition. Can you speak
Yeah.
to that a little bit, and maybe
Yeah.
even a little encouragement to our listeners
Yeah.
about how to get there?
Yeah. Well, you know, every bit of it that you figure out in business is just another notch in your life confidence, because you know, I have had when my real estate company hit that bad market and was doing bad, I had 74 agents at that point working for me,
Mm.
plus a staff on salary. And I was all of a sudden 90 days past due in my bills, like overnight. And I was never past due on anything. And it was so frightening. And, you know, when I think back to that, like Monica was born in 86. So that was like, she would have been 5 and 6 years old while this is going on. And my husband was self-employed in also a home builder. So when my business kind of atrophied, so did his, because the housing market kind of went down. So we were both, you know, realizing that we were making a living off the same thing. And we didn't ever think about it till the day the faucet shut off and we had no income. We still had mortgages and car payments and truck payments and all those things that you have. So I remember sitting in my office in really like taking a deep breath and saying, okay, like I can't figure out how to solve this. And I'm such a good problem solver. Like usually that's what I'm known for, is my ability to like push away personalities and just focus on the problem and guide us through the what is the real problem here and how do we solve it. But that day when my payables were, you know, 90 days past due, I had people on salary and I had payroll to pay and taxes to pay. And I just thought, oh my God, like there's no money. You know, what do I do? So I sat quietly with myself and I thought, okay, like what is the next smartest thing to do? And I thought, well, I'm going to try to think of who I know that has the most money of anybody I physically know. And I'm going to call that person. So I knew a fella that owned the shopping center that my Clark Summit office was in since 1986. And so he owned a couple clothing line stores and a couple shopping centers. And so I called him and I said, you know, I'm kind of in crisis and I'm wondering if you could give me some time to talk me through it. And he's like, oh, sure. What's going on? And I said, well, okay, here it is. And I said, you know, I've expanded my company. I went from 2 profitable offices to 4 offices. And now nothing's profitable. Like I shouldn't, and I spent all my money to acquire them. So I don't have any money to fall back on. Like I spent my cushion in acquisition and sign changes and office furniture. And so thinking the market would just keep going on like it had. I just spent all my money. And I said, now these offices don't make any money. They're really, such a problem. And I signed 5-year triple net leases. If you don't know what a triple net lease is, it's the worst way to find out for sure what all the fine print means is to have signed one when the market goes bad. It means you're responsible for the rent, the taxes, insurance, and maintenance on the building for the whole time of the lease. So I had this lease that didn't allow me to sublet. It had a sublet restriction in it saying that I couldn't pass it on to another tenant. So listen to this stuff. This is the juice.
Yeah.
Like, don't sign something like that.
Worst case scenario.
Yeah. So back to the conversation with him, he said to me, okay, explain to me where you are. And I said, okay, I'm 90 days behind on my bills and heading past 90 now. I have 7 people on payroll. I can't pay my payroll. I can't pay my payroll taxes. I really can't pay anything. I can't pay my bills at home. And so he said, okay, you have 2 choices today. And he said, so you could take either one. Either one would be an intelligent choice at this point. He said, you could close and just take your financial losses. That might mean even filing personal bankruptcy, depending on how the creditors will work with you to, try to recover. Like, you'll just need to go get a job and see if they'll agree to let you pay these debts in payments. Or, he said, I don't really know how big these numbers are, but, you could try to work out payment plans. But he said the other choice would be to make really deep cuts, get rid of your staff, close offices, make huge, deep, painful cuts, painful choices, and, just call everybody that you owe money and say, listen, I can't pay you what I'm behind, but I'll pay the current until I can get caught up, and I'll make a payment plan with you. So I called all my creditors and made payment plans with all of them. I cut all my staff. I told them that they could, go and I would compensate them for what I owed them as soon as I could, or they could stay and work with no compensation, and that I would compensate them as soon as I could. So half my staff stayed anyway with no pay. Wow. And half of them left. And which, I was amazed that anybody stayed, but so it took me about 2 years to righten the ship, and it took me another 5 years before I paid off all that debt. But I learned huge, valuable lessons during that time that, for one thing, just because you have 2 good things doesn't mean 4 things will be good. Like, a lot of times companies expand and the dynamics of expansion are really bad. Like, markets are all different, and the personality of markets are all different, and there's no way you can really know that. So unless you're like McDonald's and have like a franchise that's going to be cookie cutter everywhere, and even McDonald's is suffering greatly right now. Like, they're trying to recreate themselves because their numbers are so bad. So, to me, if you have something going good and it's profitable, just grow it. Don't try to duplicate it in places, because, physical buildings and your bricks that you own all need maintenance and money and staffing and things that are very hard to shift on a dime. But if you stick with one, or I've had 2, I started out with 2, and I still have 2 Century 21s now that do well, but they're only 20 minutes from each other. And one's 5 minutes from my home, the other one's 20 minutes. I can physically handle them, and I know both markets really, really well. So I'm like safe and smart enough to run those, you know.
Mhm.
I wasn't safe and smart enough to add two more in markets that were a little physically far and mentally markets that I didn't know. Like I didn't know the Pocono market, and I got out of it, and I still don't know that Pocono market. Like I never went back in, you know.
Yeah.
So my tail went between my legs, and I went running back to the market I know, and have been successful there for the next 25 years.
Mhm.
But my beginning was a very bumpy. So I think in my business sense, all of those things made me get my ego out of the way. It's very embarrassing to fail, but somewhere in my brain I was thinking, well, if I save it, it's not a fail. If I save it, it was just like a bad experience.
Yeah.
So I think whether I saved it or not, I personally am never a failure. Some of the things that I've done along the way have been fails, but it's kind of like if you think of yourself cooking in the kitchen. So you're going to make dinner, probably 300 nights a year, and everybody needs to eat. So even if you fail at a couple meals, it doesn't mean like you're a failure and you can't cook and you should just like move over.
Right.
For one thing, there's nobody willing to take the helm and cook, so you're stuck with it anyway. Or for the most part, every now and then somebody will do it. But the thing is, if you fail a few recipes, like you don't say I'm a failure. You just go, oh wow, I'm never going to use that spice again, or I'm never going to cook that again because it was just a disaster. So, I'm a cook. I love to prepare food, and I make something every day in my kitchen just because I delight in doing it. But my fails are my fails. Like I'm like, this was a fail. We're walking this one to the woodshed. That's where you throw your stuff, behind the shed.
I love it.
We're putting it back out to Mother Earth.
Yeah. Full circle.
Let's try again because this was disgusting. So, but I never, I trudge back to the house thinking, okay, never put that spice with that thing again, or whatever I learned from it. But I definitely don't think of myself as a fail as a cook. And so in business, when I was having that critically horrible day, and I decided to call this fella that really, I think, mentored me well in the moment to say, you do have choices, and neither one of them were that hot. Actually, they both seemed pretty horrible at the time.
Right.
But it seemed more horrible to quit. It seemed more like it left me without direction to quit. Like I didn't know what to go do. And I thought, and at the end of the day, quitting, I still have the problem. I still have to pay all these bills, but it seemed like I had another layer of problem. It seemed like I still have to pay everything, but now I also don't have a way to pay because I'm throwing my job into the crick
Right.
too.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed more logical to stay in, even though it looked like a huge ship going down in big flames. I felt more comfortable trying to salvage it because I already knew the business. I already knew that it has ups and downs. And
Right.
so even though I was suffering it down, I knew it would come back up. I just didn't know when.
Right.
So
it's a balance between following what you know you need to do, right? It's a calling from within, and you at some point you have to listen to that. But it's also, grinding your teeth on some stuff and getting knocked around a little bit, getting some experience under your belt, whether you label it as a fail or a not fail, it's all a learning experience, right?
Yeah.
And now you can look back on those things and say, well,
I survived.
Yeah, we're still here, we're still going, and you've got right now you've got, some amazing successes going on, which is phenomenal. And, and it's all a journey, right? And how do you say it? We're all fluid, right?
Yes, we are all fluid. And I think if you can embrace that life is always going to flow, when you're going through a good spurt, say, put some money away, squirrel for money, especially these self-employeds, any money that comes in, just think half of it, or, a good portion of it just has to go in the jar for this winter, or this, my slowest season, so I can still feel safe, because your money is to make you feel safe and enjoy the things of your life that you want to enjoy. And there's nothing like money to take you by the throat and put you up against the wall, because when you don't have money and you have obligations, it's the most horrible, horrible feeling. Mm-hmm. So I just think, don't, when you have the big wins coming in, don't get too cocky, don't get too, sure yourself, and, just say, okay, I'm going to look at this big windfall as only half of it, put half of it to the side. So I think, one thing about going through the hard times is it starts to weave the fiber of who you are and how tough you are. I had people telling me my daughter was going to die, and I just did not accept that. And I had people tell me that I could go file bankruptcy or just beg forgiveness and just, admit truth to the world. You failed, you mucked up, you have a lot of bad stuff to work through, and whoever's willing to work through it with you, great. And who isn't, you can't be mad at them. You have to let them go, because they've got to take care of themselves too. So, right. So I learned so many valuable things, but now, I'm cruising towards 60 years old, and I feel blessed that I'm anchored in confidence, because not too much scares me. When someone tells you that your child's going to die, and when someone tells you that the best thing you could probably do is go file personal bankruptcy, and you manage to get through those things, not too much else can really scare you. Right. It's all minutia that you need to, brace yourself and work through. And the sooner that you get your emotions to the side and get your brain kicked in gear on how to problem solve, you just kind of glide through these things and get to the other side.
Which I would imagine probably helps you be such an amazing coach to your clients and clients, right? Not patients, clients for your integrative health coaching, because sometimes I'm sure they're just, dealing with I just don't feel right. I know I can feel better. I just don't know how to do that. And then sometimes you're probably working with people that are staring down the barrel of a serious illness. And those experiences, I would imagine, have probably led you to look at that problem square on and say, okay, we're gonna just forget about all the complication stuff, and we're going to simplify it, and we're going to figure this out, which is amazing. It's amazing how that all kind of comes full circle. So in that respect, let's get back to the book a little bit as we, kind of finish this up. The book, tell me what it's called. Simple Natural Healing. Love it. Yes. And that hit shelves in October of 2016. Is that right? Yes. Okay. So your first published book, right?
Yeah.
Probably
I was an author in another book called The Energy of Healing. And that was an Amazon bestseller. The woman that got me to write this book actually is the editor of this book, and she brought a bunch of us together to tell our story.
So interesting.
The Energy of Healing is a book with all different people telling their story of what what happened in their life. So,
Gotcha.
so it's really nice to read collaborative books like that, because it, you do get feeling better about where you are if you're going through some struggles when you read other people with their story and realize they did get to the other side.
Yeah, and many different perspective. It's not just an exception to the rule. There's actually, there's lots of good stuff going on. That's very cool. So Simple Natural Healing launched October 2016. Now we are almost 8 months, 8 or 9 months since then. For you, what's next? What are you working on right now? Is it the book, or what's next for you? I'd love to hear that.
Well, back what you were saying just before this, like, for one thing, when I meet with people, the confidence I have, whether it's with my real estate or with a client in my health coaching, I make people calm and they feel like there's hope. So, so they feel safe. They feel like there's hope. There's something else to do. So I teach from a perspective of no stone unturned. So I mentioned that in my book, that I didn't want to leave any stone unturned when they gave me my diagnosis of my daughter. And so when I work with people and when I look at problems, I, instead of getting into the emotion of it, I start poking at it and start looking at it from every possible way we could possibly solve this issue or take a look at it. So I think in all things, if we just try to turn every stone, and even if you think you've turned every stone, call the smartest person that always seems steady and like they have the tiger by the tail, and call them and say, here's my problem, and just be honest. I think probably one of the most important things we can all do is be honest with ourselves about things, and then just commit to be honest with other people about whether we want to do something or not, what we think about things. And as long as we're doing things with integrity and without a willfulness to hurt anyone, like if we're just trying to be kind and gracious and good and always do the best we can, I think that, just putting that out there and being honest, like, you do have bad days, you do have fails, like, it's not bad to reach out to a professional on Facebook or someone, that you've kind of followed and said, listen, this is where I am. Can you give me any advice? And I think a lot of people suffer in silence and really just keep rolling a problem over and over in their head. Or even, you're doing online business and online marketing, and that all has its own, ups and downs and nuances. So, but I love how you just stay the course and you're working through it. And you even helped me with some of the functions on my own computer this morning, so we didn't have a lot of noise and interruptions. So thank you for that. I learned something new. But, I think if we all just can stay in not getting too big for our britches, stay humble and stay a servant, and not just to other people, but stay a servant to yourself. Like, to me, how I serve myself is I try to be honest. If I don't want to do something, I look at why, and I'm not afraid to say to someone, thanks for inviting me, but I really can't come, but think of me next time. And graciously bow out of all these things that I have a lot on my plate that needs my attention, that I really want to give my 100% self. So I've had to graciously bow out of things. So all of that is about honoring ourselves and keeping ourselves feeling safe. So I think don't underestimate that. That's like huge as far as taking you far down the road and keeping you kind of steady as you build your business. And always have wonderful mentors, which that's what I love about supporting the Rising Tide Society. Those are young to-be business leaders, and anything that I can do to pass the torch and make your business a little easier for you, and give you a safe place to get some advice. I want to be like the fella that answered his phone the day I called, that, to him, he's just taken a call from a tenant who had paid her rent in 4 months. But he never mentioned it at all. And he worked out a payment plan for me. And, I'm always so grateful for that, because he just let me decide. He didn't try to push any thoughts on me, and he didn't shame me into anything. And so I want to be that for young business people coming up, and I want them to be able to go a lot further, faster than me. So I hope that's what I've had to offer today.
Well, I can't tell you enough how inspired I am from this conversation, how glad that I am to have had you on the podcast. And you're really speaking so true to the mission of Marketing in Yoga Pants. It's a podcast, but it's also a sisterhood. And I have a calling within myself to almost be that phone line between you and that guy that you called so many years ago asking for advice, right? I have that connector calling. I see so much inspiration from people that are not only have gone through so much like you have, but also the people that are really just deep in the trenches right now. We all have something to offer. And if we can somehow, although entrepreneurship and business ownership can be a very isolating place to be, if we can somehow connect with each other, man, we can go far. I mean, we're going to go so much farther if we're connected than if we're just trying to slog through stuff on our own. So
You're so right.
I cannot support that thought anymore. And that's what this podcast is about. That's what the Facebook group is all about. So that's amazing. Hey, I want to end this conversation with, I'd love for you to tell the listeners where to find your book and where to find you online, because while we haven't talked a ton about the actual stuff in the book, I mean, everybody has to know it's simple, it's natural, it's healing, exactly like the title. And from what I've seen, it could really make the difference in so many people's lives. Praise the Lord, I don't have an illness, but I gathered so much good stuff from the book and our talk a couple months ago, just overall well-being. And that's so important when you're running a business. I mean, it's running on your shoulders, so your shoulders better be strong, right? Your body better be there.
Even your cognitive thinking, like just having a good base line of what your nutrition should be, you're able to think clearer, you're able to articulate your words without having so much emotion, because really a lot of the bad foods we eat really mess with our hormones and our digestive enzymes and our good bacterias. And so our body feels like it's in fight or flight or in stress mode, and it's really from the food we ate puts it in that. So there's just, my book really has been written to try to be a gentle way to just crowd out your bad stuff and just slowly tweak it with some of these things that you can so easily and inexpensively do. So you're so right. Like if you're doing business on your own and you're trying to get out there and do all the parts, you need to be as sharp as a razor. You just have to be on top of your game. And so, doing the concepts of simple natural healing, this is like the quickest read. Most people tell me it takes them like 3.5 hours to read it right through. So it's just like a good dose of, okay, I can do that. And
Right.
that's going to be the bullet you need to just keep you like really sharp and on top of it. So I have a Facebook business page called Transforming Health Naturally with Donna Labar. And I'm also on Instagram and Twitter and Tumblr and Flickr, like
everywhere,
and, all those places. That's Donna Labar. Also, my website is www.donnalabar.com. I have a free downloadable ebook, a free pantry list, a video that you can watch with some folks doing testimonials that have really brought themselves back from death's door by doing some of these concepts. And I had a radio show. I took a little sabbatical from it just right now because I'm working on some projects for my book. But all of my archived shows for the past year are on my website with a lot of great alternative healing people that I've interviewed. So that's like another source, to find. If you're like looking for something specific, you could probably find a practitioner on there because it's all practitioner based. So I'm like you. I like to connect people with holistic practitioners so people can check into alternative medicine. And I think the way you're thinking, Brit, is just so spot on, because it is lonely out there being self-employed, and especially if you're doing a business from home, it can be certainly lonely. So everything you do to bring great ideas and solve problems and give people a sense of community is so healing. It's really healing. So
thank you so much for those words. Thank you so much. And right back at you, because and just the overall, your well-being, your health, what you're going through in your body, that can be isolating as well. Because a lot of times you can feel like, why am I the only one that has to deal with this? It can be so tough. So I feel like we are soul sisters in this calling of our lives, which is so awesome. That's so
we
good.
Are.
Okay, so donnalabar.com. I will link to all of that, all of the good stuff that she just listed off in the show notes. You heard her, girls. Go check her out. Send some love and hop into our private Facebook group. Hopefully Donna will join us over there as this podcast publishes, and hear from her over the next few days. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. Keep the conversation going by visiting marketinganyogapants.com/Facebook, where you'll get to join that private Facebook group I've been talking so much about. There, you'll get to chat with our podcast guests. Yeah, they're in there too, and all of the other brilliant creative business owners. We're connecting, we're meeting our soul sisters, and we're building our businesses, all while in yoga pants. So come hang out with us. Again, visit marketinganyogapants.com/Facebook to get in. And one more thing. If you dig this podcast, would you be awesome and share it with someone? This entire Marketing in Yoga Pants movement is nothing without its community. So please share. And if you're really feeling the love right now, jump into iTunes. You're probably already there if you're listening to this right now. And leave us a rating and review. The more of those we rack up, the more the podcast will be found by ladies like you, and the stronger this community becomes. This episode was edited and produced by the Podcast Engineers. They're pretty great, so go find them at podcastengineers.com. This episode was also brought to you by my online marketing agency, Jam Marketing Group, and you can find us at jammarketinggroup.co. That's all for now. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you back here next week on the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. Love ya. Bye.